Hi everyone, so in this particular video I wanted to share with you some of my decks and keep going with the, because some of you have asked to see some of the cards I use that I'm using in my own practice and things, so I want to share some of that with you. Basically what I'm going to be showing now today is the tarot of the Orishas. And I'm going to be doing a couple of complementary bits and pieces on this deck. So before I even bought this deck, I bought the Tower of the Orisha, the companion book. This is a bilingual book, English and Spanish, porque yo hablo español también. So it was really nice for me to have the Spanish version with the English version, because sometimes when you read it in Spanish or in different languages, it's not quite the same information that's on there, while here it is pretty much the same. But reading Spanish, because I do speak Spanish, it was a good addition. And there was a used book that came all the way from the UK here. So I got this book before I even bought the actual deck. Now, about the deck and about the Orishas, my expectation, and even having seen the book, I still decided to get the deck, even though there are some major issues I have with this deck, aside from the fact that it is really hard for me to connect with it due to some of the portion of it that I really don't like. So it comes in with in this box. This box I've only kept this box because I don't really use this deck. Therefore, this is a really flimsy box. As you can see, it's already kind of falling apart. It's not the box you can keep, and usually you should put this kind of the deck that comes in this kind of box, you should put them in a mesh bag, because that box is not gonna be living it for long. It comes with a guidebook, and basically the bigger book is much more in-depth than this one, but it still gives you a lot. For each of the cards, you get about 3 pages of information, and then of course, so you get an image of the card in black and white. You get some of the information on the deity, some of the meanings, and then in the back you get some of the prayers if you would like to do some rituals, or some incantation or what have you. Now, what I do have as what I do like about it is because it is based on the Orishas system, which is a system from Western Africa. But the issue that I have is, for example, just the cover of the book and the cover of the box, which is this white lady on it, which to me is kind of a complete disconnect between a system from West Africa and having a white person on the cover of the deck. And I just can't, it's part of the reason why I can connect with this deck. I use few cards here and there, and this deck has been calling me to do a lot more things with them, and I do think it's much more because of the energy of the deck itself, rather than the actual cards and the artist. I mean, I didn't do much research in terms of who was the artist, what was the process, and why was it such a whitewash in there, in terms of having so many different white people in there. So don't get me wrong, I do buy decks that have a lot of that may not even have African people or black people in them. The issue that I do have with this deck is that because it is an African system, I was expecting to see the deck completely full of people of African descent, which wasn't the case. And maybe some of you who worked with this deck before, or who don't mind or whatever, you can just let me know in the comments why you wouldn't care. To me, it's kind of ridiculous. It's like having a deck based on Shinto, which is a Japanese system of belief, and then having some white people in there for some of the deities, which just doesn't make any sense to me. But let's still dive into it. So in the minor arcana, so in the tarot you have the 4 suits, wands, pentacles, chalice, and swords, which basically represent fire, earth, water, and air. And here basically they just went by the elements. So you have elements of fire. And for pretty much for the minor arcana, it is really much rooted in African culture. And you can see that the characters have African features. The scenery is pretty much based on African. Here you can see that there's some people looking like Tuaregs, people who live in the desert in Africa. So there are some major reference to the African culture. Here you have air, and it's a mixture between animals and characters and sceneries and situations. But as I'm going to show you, there's I think just one card among the minor arcana that to me was a complete disconnect again. But at least in the minor arcana, you don't really get that feel of this deck being completely out of place or whitewash, as some people will say. This is not to be too negative. Like, for example, this is the card when I was, this mermaid, and which is like this white lady laying down. So I was completely disconnected when I got this card, and in the reading it just throws me completely off, because the energy even from the card for me is not even conducive to the type of reading that I wanted to do. For example, if I wanted to work with my ancestors in this deck, this kind of completely throws me off. For some other people, it may not matter that much. For me, I may as well just take a deck that's completely whitewash and work with that if that's the case. But it's just, to me, I just don't get why you will throw in a white person in that environment. If you look at the Celtic tower decks or cards, you don't even see a black person, even though there were black person who were Celtics and Druids back in that days. So I don't really understand that kind of logic, or why the artist chose to go that route. But the rest of the minor arcanas are pretty much on point. The artwork it is nice kind of artwork, and the colors do draw you in. So this is part of the reason why I did purchase the deck, because there are some cards that can be used to do path working and meditation and things like that. But it's just a card that just for me throws me off, and I don't get it. And this problem is much more present in the major arcana. This is why I cannot do a reading with this deck. I will use individual cards and have to put in a lot of energy in order to just get the level of energy that I would want from the card to begin with. Not all of the cards, but those who are whitewash. And whitewash basically means that it's been you taking something that should be from a specific culture, and you putting a white character on it as a face of it. So this is the fact that they chose this image as a cover, to me, is just bizarre. I do understand that if you know the history of how the Orishas system, this is another card that I was just not getting. This white woman. Here you have a redhead. And I mean, I'm just saying that, when I bought the deck, the expectation to have a system from West Africa and to have people from there just being represented throughout the deck, I think it's not too much to ask for. It's not completely far-fetched on my part. We do have a lot of fairies and forest spirits that do not need to be represented as white characters. Or with blonde and European features and so forth. So I do, for those of you who study the Orishas, who are familiar with African systems, if you do have this deck, let me know how you're working with that and whether you care or not. And when you know about the history of how this system of belief was brought to the America through the slave trade and other travelers, and how some people were forced to worship saints and forced into Christianity and used Christianity in order to mask the real deity they were going for, I think it was essential for this kind of deck to kind of break that and allow, now that these days are past, allow the characters to actually fully reflect the ethnicity of those deities who are our ancestors. I think that would have made a greater homage to them. Even this, I don't get the magician being this this white man, or maybe his mix, I don't know, but just looking at the hair and the features and stuff, it's just things that throw me off. Here as well, so I don't know what this card and this representation of a shoe really does for this deck. So, you know, again, a white angel, I don't subscribe to that, or I don't see what this has to do with the system of Orishas, the guardian angel, and with represented that way. And so let me know, maybe this is because it's someone who's of mixed heritage. I haven't really looked into the character and the person who read the deck or who chose the illustration, because even if you have an illustrator, you have to okay the images that are going to be in there. And just to finish on a lighter note, if you are out there and you are working on a deck, and I do encourage you, if you are a creator or creatrix and you're working on decks and you love the Orishas and the system from West Africa, go ahead and create that deck, because people like me will definitely be interested in purchasing it, and even people who are part of a different of Santeria, of a religion, who sometimes borrow from the Orisha systems or from Western Africa systems of belief, will definitely be interested in buying a deck. So if you don't have any issue with those few cards, it would be a great deck to have, because like I said, some of the imagery, the colors are really great for workings and doing a lot of different things, animal work, animal spirit work as well. But if you're like me and you kind of, those kind of cards kind of throw you off, you can still use the deck for particular things, but it's probably a deck that will end up giving away at some point, just because of these elements that I just can't get over. So, okay, I hope you like this little review of this deck. And if you have anything to say, you can share and let me know. And if you do like this, well, I will be making more videos on sharing the decks I have. But I do think that I will be doing more of a thematic kind of showing of different decks. So I hope you're gonna have a wonderful week whenever this video is uploaded and you're watching it. And I'll see you very, very soon. Bye!